Good morning, everybody. How are you? Happy Sunday. Welcome to our Sunday tutorial. Geez, I'm already seeing a lot of excitement in the chat. As Leo correctly points out, it is our last live of 2024. So really looking forward to spending this time with you. It's been a heck of a 2024. We've had a lot of Sunday tutorials. So really happy to have you here to join us again for one last Sunday for this year. And then we'll see what 2025 brings. And a big part of getting ready for 2025 is to also start talking about goals. What is it that you want to do in 2025, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to focus on that. But for now, I just want to say hello, welcome, hope you're well. It's been I think it's been a week since we met last because, I took a little break for Christmas holidays. Spent some time with my family, spent some time doing personal things, doing walking, getting ready for some goals that I have also in 2025, and really just trying to spend a lot of time reflecting and getting ready for the things that are coming up, right? You just never know what's around the corner. I mean, I know there's things I want to accomplish, but you just never really know what's going to be next in your life, right? So glad that you're here. Glad that you're going to be spending some time with us. We'll see how long today takes. I don't know how long the session is going to take. We're gonna be a little bit loose today. I don't necessarily have every single thing planned out, but we're just gonna see where the conversation takes us. But I hope that you're well. I hope that you're safe. I hope that you and your family are good, and I hope that you're ready to spend time with us here as a community and ready for 2025. So if you're new, welcome. I'm still getting a lot of new viewers, a lot of new members on all my platforms. I'm still getting people who are surprised when I tell them I do this full time. I still get people that are surprised that I have a YouTube channel. Maybe they're on Instagram, but they don't know about YouTube, which I think is a little weird. But just glad that you're here and see what some of our goals are and how the session is going to develop as far as planning our goals and talking with each other on this beautiful Sunday. So let me double check to make sure that all of my different feeds are working. I'm already seeing people in the chat. It's so good to see you guys. I know it's only been a week, but it feels like it's been a long time since we all met. So glad that you're here. I'm gonna see, hopefully I shouldn't be getting any problems on my Instagram. If you're watching me on Instagram, you're welcome to stay there. But I always post the link so you can watch us on YouTube for the widescreen, which is a little bit more preferable on Sundays. Okay, it looks like my Instagram chat is still acting up, but I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat over here. But I think, yeah, we'll just have to see how the Instagram chat works out. All right, so from the beginning, let me just kind of get you guys thinking a little bit. Start thinking about some of the goals that you have for 2025, or at least the ones you're comfortable sharing. And then I'm going to show you a framework for how some of these things can work. But, before we really get into it, I kind of want you to start thinking in the back of your mind the different goals that you might have for yourself in 2025 and how you want to carry those forward. Okay? And if you're comfortable sharing them, that would help because that kind of helps the presentation. But start thinking about that, okay? All right, cool. So I'm seeing some people over on Instagram and the chat did carry over onto my screen. So that's fantastic. So thank you for that, Johnny. I think is it Johnny? If I mispronounce that, let me know. But it looks like the Instagram chat is working, which is fantastic. All right, so let me start with the chat. Leo, our good friend Leo says, good morning, everyone. Last live of 2024. Let's go. Can't wait for 2025. Yeah, I hear you on that, Leo. The new year is always a good opportunity for us to kind of reset, take a fresh perspective to everything. Maybe have a renewed positive attitude or, just kind of help us kind of wash things away, right? Kind of let go of the past, look into new things, right? So Leo, I love your enthusiasm for 2025. I think it's going to be a great year for everyone. So yeah, thanks for being here, and let's see what if we can't hack out some of these goals for 2025. Lalman, our good friend Lalman. Hey Dennis, great to see you from Kathmandu, Nepal. How are you, Lalman? Good to see you too. Great to see you too. Yeah, I took a little bit of a break. It's been a week since we all talked, right? Yeah, I streamed last Sunday, and the very next day I went to go see my parents, so that's why I didn't stream on Monday. I kind of took that week off, but yeah, it's good to be back with you guys. Hope everyone had a good break. I certainly did. I had a great time in LA. Spent a lot of time with my parents. You know, they have a nice house in LA, so you know, always comfortable to stay there. But yeah, good to see you guys too. Hope you're doing well, Lelman. Hope everything's good out there for you in Nepal. Rex, our good friend Rex says, happy Sunday, everyone. Hey Rex, how are you? Hope you're doing well out there in New York City, Rex. Yeah, Johnny over on Instagram. Johnny, good to see you. Glad you're here. Johnny on you're welcome to stay on Instagram, but I also put the link in case you want to join us over on YouTube. It's going to be a little bit easier to see when we switch over to the widescreen mode, okay? But Johnny, glad you're here. If you want to let us know a little bit about you, you're welcome to do that. Manoj, our good friend Manoj says, good morning, Sir Dennis and everyone. Happy Sunday, Manoj from Bangalore, India. Happy Sunday to you too, Manoj. I love how you greet everyone, so that's nice of you. Yeah, Manoj, hope you're doing well out there in India. Hope everything is good. Hope your family is good and safe out there. Leo, I'm going to come back to your post, okay? Osama, our good friend from, I think you're from Satat, if I remember right. Hi, sir. Good to see you. Hope everything is going well. Good to see you too, Osama. Everything is going very well, thanks. Like I said, took a little bit of break there, you know, Christmas holiday. Spent some time with my parents, spent some time with my dog. I went walking on Friday for 10 miles, almost more than 15 kilometers. So that was good to get a workout in, you know, burn off some of those extra Christmas calories. But doing well, Osama. Hope the same for you. Michael says, Sunday's blessings, Sir Dennis and everyone. Same to you, Michael. Hope you're doing well on this Sunday. Michael, I believe you're from Nigeria, from Lagos, so I hope you're doing well out there. But yeah, I think we are going to have a good Sunday. So thanks for joining us. Rex says, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Looking forward to 2025. Yeah, me too. You know, it's amazing to think it's just a couple days away, right? I mean, it's already the 29th. It's so crazy. Like I told you guys, Christmas kind of snuck up on me. I was out walking one day and when I passed somebody, they said Merry Christmas. And I was like, that's weird. Why are they telling me Merry Christmas so early? And it wasn't early. It was just a couple days away. So same thing for today, right? New Year's is right around the corner. Leo, I'm going to come back to your comments, okay? Tunga from Newcastle, England. Tunga, I know it's not your first time, so welcome back. Glad to see you again. I get so encouraged when people come back, so thanks so much. Tunga, hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good Christmas out there. Let us know how you're doing. Tunga says, thanks for the inspiration, Dennis. This year has been great. I certainly hope so, and thank you. I appreciate that compliment. I certainly hope it's been a great year. I know that 2024 has been a different year for me, right? At the start of 2024, I was living in New York, working for a very large company and all that stuff. And at the end of 2024, I'm self-employed. I've managed to build this fantastic community of people like all of you. So it's crazy how things can shift in a year, right? So who knows what next year will bring, right? Very excited about that. Let's see, Osama, let me come back to your question. Great question. Let me come back to it. Garvey, good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a little while. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Dennis. Had a productive year and hoping for more next year. Okay, cool. Yeah. Really appreciate your optimistic attitude, Garvey. You know, so much of our success is really about mindset, right? About having a positive outlook, right? How are you going to see the world, right? It's really easy to be negative, right? So, Garvey, I can appreciate that you're bringing an optimistic view the next year. So I hope the same for you, and I hope the same for everyone in my community. Ishmael over on Instagram. Ishmael, thank you for joining us. I think it's your first time. So Ishmael, on Sundays, I typically don't take questions. I will, Sunday is really a bit more of a tutorial. Today specifically, we're talking about kind of like the year end and how people are feeling about that and goal setting. So, you know, you're welcome to stay. I'd love to get your input on your goals. I'm going to show you guys a framework. I'm going to kind of show you two things. I'm going to show you how goal setting is done, what the process is like, and then I'm going to show you a framework for those goals. So that's kind of the focus for today. You're welcome to come back on the other days that I stream. That's when I take more questions, and I stream Thursdays through Mondays, right? Yeah, Thursdays to Mondays. I take Tuesdays and Wednesdays off. But yeah, you're welcome to join us, Ishmael, for our goal setting process. All right, so Leo, thank you so much. I appreciate that you're already sharing some of your goals. For those of you that joined us just a little bit late, I'm asking you to start thinking about your goals right now, the goals that you'd like to share. Because I am going to be asking for people to kind of, you know, share some of their goals, and then that way maybe I can show you how it fits into some of these frameworks or some of the goal processes that you're going to see. So please start thinking about that. So Leo says, bring my projects to a presentation point, share more on LinkedIn and personal website, or share more on LinkedIn, have a personal website, start to share more with an audience of professional point of views about some subjects in data science. I think now I feel more confident regarding being seen as a data scientist. All right, cool, Leo. Leo, I love that background. We're going to talk about some of these goals. But Leo, if you want to talk a little bit about what has made you feel more confident, like what have some of those like changes or learnings or whatever has been, I think people would find that of interest. So if you're comfortable sharing that, let us know. Let us know in the chat, Leo. Thanks for that. RC Sim says, hi Dennis and everyone else, nice to see you again. Yeah, nice to see you too. Welcome back, RC Sim. Hope you're doing well out there. RC Sim, we're gonna be talking about goal setting today. So start thinking about some of your 2025 goals if you feel like sharing them. Osama says, as we near the end of the year, can you tell us what actions you would have taken and what actions you would have abstained from in the realm of data science if time went back 10 years? Wow, that's a heck of a question. Jeez, Osama. Can you tell us what actions you would have taken and what actions you would have abstained from in the realm of data science if time went back 10 years? Wow. Geez, that's a tough question, Osama. You know, if anybody else in the chat wants to contribute to that, let me know. You know, and obviously we're limiting it to the world of data science, right? Because I don't think anybody wants to start sharing their life regrets, right? That's a whole other discussion, whole other channel, right? What would have I abstained from the realm of data science? Because you're asking what I would have done and what do I regret or what would I not want to do? Geez, that's a good one. As far as like what I wouldn't have done again, when I did my master's studies, I had electives and I chose to take SAS as one of my electives. Actually, I think I took it twice because they were like half semester courses or something like that. So Osama, I probably just wouldn't take SAS again. I have used SAS 0 times since, you know, stopping that course. Like literally 0 times. SAS as a company hasn't really kept up with a lot of the latest developments, you know, so I don't know, you know, they kind of have a mixed outlook, right, for the future. But I would say I would probably have chosen different electives, you know. I kind of regret choosing those electives of SAS. So maybe that, you know, that I wouldn't have invested time in taking SAS because it wasn't an easy course. SAS is not an easy language. So I would say I would probably abstain from that. What actions would I have taken or actions I would have abstained from? What actions would I have taken, like additional actions to have taken? Well, quite frankly, as weird as it sounds, I probably would have started this data science social media effort earlier, right? I don't. That's kind of one of those funny life things. Um, I had virtually no social media because the company I was working for had a very strict social media policy, and it was just easier to not have social media rather than have to deal with the policy, right? So, in a way, leaving that company was kind of like that blessing in disguise to start all of this, and I would have done it earlier, but it would have been impossible for me to do it because of the social media restrictions, right? So yeah, I mean, so I would tell you that I would started this earlier, but I wouldn't have known that because I would have never really done it. My work wasn't really conducive to that, right? Anything else I would have done differently? Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, Osama. Great question, though. Great question. Thanks for making me think, because you're really making me think here. RC Sim says, what electives would you have taken instead of SAS? Yeah, I don't know, RC Sim. I'd have to go back and look at what the other electives were. I can't recall it at my time. Because remember, guys, when I was studying this, it wasn't a data science major. It was applied statistics. Data science wasn't really a formal field of study anywhere, right? It existed, but not as a degree, right? It was applied statistics. So I'm sure there were other electives RC Sim to choose from, but they weren't necessarily exclusive to data science. They may have just been like other forms of statistics. But I can't remember what they were. But I do regret that. I just haven't used SAS. I didn't really enjoy the course. I mean, I'm glad I know of it, but I haven't used it. I don't see myself using it. It's just not a package that has kept up, a company and a package that has kept up with the most bleeding edge developments. Husaifa, thanks for being here. I see you over on Instagram. I don't really take a lot of questions on Sundays. You're welcome to come. Well, first of all, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to come Thursdays through Mondays when I do a little bit more of the back and forth of questions. Okay, but I'm glad to see you here. Thank you. Starry Vibes. Wow, we haven't seen that name in a while. Starry Vibes, how are you? Hello, sir. I hope you're doing well. It's been quite a while. I've missed attending these sessions. We've missed you too, so I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well, Starry Vibes. Glad to see you again. So Starry Vibes, we're going to be talking about 2025 goals. So if there's any goals you're comfortable sharing, get them ready. And then I'm going to ask for them. And then I'm going to show you how they fit into a framework that you might run into during a formal process. Okay? Leo says, yes, practicing is giving me a lot of confidence. Being around you and the community also showed me a lot of things. Checking the current market for data science and seeing it doesn't look that scary. All right, cool. I'm glad we've had that influence on you, Leo. Let me finish all your comments and then I'm going to come back. I'm starting to feel like a data scientist, and that's of course thanks to you. If you want to be a data scientist, be a data scientist. Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's getting me in the feels, man. Why are you doing that to me so early in the morning? I appreciate that, Leo. Thank you. I feel I can control and able to follow my creativity instead of waiting for guidelines or clues while approaching a problem. Everything now is, what if I use DS to get this solved? How would it be? Yeah, cool. I love that. I love that. Manoj says, well said, Leo. I agree with you. Yeah, Leo. I like the way you're putting this. Leo, I want to come back to your first statement about checking the current market for data science and seeing it doesn't look that scary. Leo, I think you're hitting on an important point there. I think a lot of people, when you're walking into your first data science job, it's your first formal data science job, you think to yourself, oh my God, they're going to be so talented. They're going to be so skilled. They're going to know all this advanced stuff, and they're going to be writing amazing code, and we're going to be working on hard problems. No, the people just want their Excel sheets to work. That's all it is, right? So I appreciate that all of us here are advancing our skills, talking about cutting edge stuff, building a community. I love that about all of you guys. But the reality is that most business problems out there are not that complex. They're going to take time. They're going to require data. You're going to have to learn to work with others, work with people, work with non-technical people also. But it's not that complex, guys. You're going to be fine. The fact that you're already here in this community, you're already ahead of most data scientists out there. Trust me, I run into some stupid data scientists out there. People who have years of experience, but they're just not very talented, right? So you're going to be fine. So Leo, I love that you've gained that perspective about, hey, I can do this. So I love that. Great comment. Manoj also likes your comments. So thanks for sharing that, Leo. I know it's not always easy for all of us to open up here. So thanks for that. But yeah, if you guys are feeling empowered about your data science studies, you should be, right? Because, not every problem is difficult. Not everything is going to be a challenge. You're going to be just fine in your roles in data science. Okay. Lulman, thanks for sharing. Lulman says faced big failures and also made substantial progress by doing projects, learning maths for AI, foundational Python skills, securing data analyst role. Plan is to delve deeper into machine learning. Nice, Lulman. Sounds like a very reasonable learning path. So good for you. I like that. Machine learning to me is where a lot of the fun in data science begins. At least I think it's fun. But yeah, so good for you, Lulman. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing. Garvey says, my goal next year is to prepare for interviews and brush up all the topics I lack in. Okay. Garvey, let's hold on to that, because I think that we can take a goal like that, and I'm going to show you a framework that should help you kind of further refine that goal. Okay. But Garvey, I appreciate that you're willing to share it. So hang around, let's put a pin in your goal or in some of the other things people have expressed. And I'm going to show you the type of formality, I guess you could say, that is applied to goals. Okay. So thanks for that. All right. Yeah. So if anybody else wants to introduce themselves, or, wants to, well, first of all, I encourage all of you right now to start thinking about goals that you want to share. Some goals I know you may not want to share, but if there are things out there that you want to talk about that you want to share, get them ready. I'm going to be asking you guys for that. I'm going to be showing you that framework so that maybe you can, if you don't want to share them, you can do it mentally and say, oh, okay, yeah, this is what I need to do. And, hopefully after the end of this, all of us are going to feel empowered to be ready for 2025. Okay. I gotta say, Osama, I'm still thinking about your question. Thanks a lot. That was a great question. I'm sure I'll come up with more things. As soon as the stream ends, I'll come up with like 3 things that I should have said, right? But yeah, what are the things I would have abstained from, or what are the things I would have done more of? Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. All right, guys. So let me start preparing some things over on my side. Let's see, what do I want to do here? I got my whiteboard up. I think everything else looks good on the chats. So yeah, let me bring this up here. And Leo says, one rabbit hole I've learned how to avoid, also thanks to you, is when you're studying so much and trying to catch up with the new tendencies, you might feel like you don't know enough. Yeah, I love that. I love that, Leo. I like the way you put that. Definitely don't, please guys, as much as you can, try to avoid getting too caught up in the latest and greatest, right? Because tying back to what I said earlier, not every problem you come across in the real world requires the latest and greatest. You may not have access to the latest and greatest depending on, your company and the policies and the servers and the blah, 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 right? Like, stick to the basic fundamentals. Stick to the parts that are always going to be a part of data science. You don't need cloud. You don't need Google Analytics. You don't. Just start in your local machine. Have Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE you want to use. Have a terminal window and just start running things. Start doing things for yourself. That's it. That's it. Leo adds, gosh, I can't talk today. Practicing. So practicing shows how much most of the problems stick with the fundamentals. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the reality is that most of this stuff is just, neural networks in some way, right? Most of the stuff out there, the cutting edge stuff, is just some variation of a neural network. And that's okay, right? So don't drive yourself crazy doing all these things when you really just need to know some fundamental tools, some fundamental building blocks. Okay? All right, guys. So today, let's focus on goals. And we're going to have two distinct sides to what I'd like to talk about. One is, what does the year at a large corporation look like for you in terms of goals, in terms of feedback you're going to get, your yearly evaluations, your bonuses, your performance payments, things like that, right? So I kind of want to walk you through that. I want to walk you through what the year looks like at a large corporation. I'm going to share my direct experience, mostly from the financial industry, but you're going to find, and I have seen these elements at other companies. Every company has their own variation, but I'm going to show you what that looks like for the year. Okay. A big part of what your year looks like is the goals you set out. So I can't show you that without also leaving you with what a framework for writing goals is like. So I'm going to show you a framework that most companies use, that you'll be expected to use, but really, it's helpful in your daily life to clearly define goals. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So it's going to have like two distinct parts today, but they're kind of correlated because you really can't write effective goals unless you have a framework to follow, right? So that's what I want to cover today. And I'm going to do it on the whiteboard, right? We're going to do it a little bit loose, right? We're going to kind of feel our way along. I know what I want to get across to you guys, but, we'll just see where we end up. So, feel free to stop me with questions or other thoughts. And like I said, at some point, I am going to solicit you for your own goals. So, we already have a couple people who put their goals. So thank you so much for that. If you're comfortable sharing at least one of your goals, let me know. And maybe we can start, we'll work with it on the screen. Or you can just sit back, listen to the framework, and then you can think about it in your own mind, how you can best apply it. Okay? All right. So let's start with what your year looks like at most large companies, okay? And this is going to be, I'm going to start this just a little bit differently, because even though I'm saying it's a year, I really can't start at the beginning. I kind of have to start in February, okay? So we're going to start in February. And I think I only need one. Close that. So here's what and by the way, I'm assuming that, at your company, the year is January to December, right? Which I think is fair in most parts of the world, but I know some countries can have their own calendar, right? But we're going to start in February. In February, you're going to go through your goal setting process. Right? That's where you're going to go ahead and establish what you want to do for the year, right? Are you guys seeing that okay? Actually, no, you're not. Why is that? I think I need to refresh. Give me just a second, guys. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to be using the whiteboard. I'm going to be using these little sticky cards. Let me know if you need me to zoom anything. Is that enough, guys? Or do you want me to go a little bit more in the zoom? I think that's a good zoom. So let me know if that's okay for you guys. And then you're gonna, so that's what your February is gonna look like. February, you're going to be setting your goals. Garbett says fine. Thank you, Garbett. Okay, you're going to be setting your goals. What is it that you want to do for the year? And then you're going to have a review with your manager. Review goals with your manager. Right? Your manager has some sort of approval process. And then on top of that, there are situations where your manager might actually give you additional goals, right? They might say, yeah, great, I like where you're going with this, but here's another 3-4 goals I want you to also consider. That's not uncommon, okay? So that's going to happen in February, the beginning of the year. The rest of the year is going to go on, and then you might end up in, let's pick a different color here. And then you might end up in June. And that's going to be a mid-year review. And that's where you're going to sit down with your manager and you're going to talk about how your goals are coming along. And by the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. Realize that these are all formal processes. There's usually some sort of a recording system. Sometimes HR has to sign off on your goals, or maybe your manager's manager has to sign off on your goals. It's so, even though I'm doing this, just explaining it to you guys, doing it with sticky notes, realize that it's usually a very formal process. Like, these goals are recorded somewhere, okay? And they're approved and all that, right? So in June, you're going to have a mid-year review where you sit down with your manager and say, how are you coming along? You said you wanted to do this. How are you doing with those, right? And they might give you some pointers, but this is really all about your goals. Okay? And I say it's about your goals as opposed to it being about your performance. It's not a performance review. Why? Okay. Then you're going to start nearing, let's call this like November. Let's make this one a different color. This is going to be November. November, well, actually, I'm sorry, take that back. It's actually more like October. October is the start of Q4, right? The fourth quarter. So it's a reminder that there's only a couple of months left in your year, right? You basically just have October, November, December left before the end of the year. So a couple of things happen in October. Let me bring this down to help center it a little bit, get it out of the way there. Okay. A couple of things might happen in October. One, you're going to make sure that your projects are on track for the end of the year, right? Because time's running out. As we've talked about in other scenarios, just because you plan to deploy something by the end of the year doesn't mean you have until December, because you're going to have all these policies and reviews, and maybe they don't deploy in December, they deploy in November as well. So you gotta be ahead of those things. So that's one thing you want to do. In a lot of scenarios, there's also what's known as a peer review, and that's where you can ask the people that you've worked with throughout the year. You can ask them and you can say, hey, would you fill out a peer review form about me? And there's a couple of questions in there like, What kind of project did you work on with this person? What were the positives of working with this person? Are there opportunities for growth or improvement that you want to give to this person? Excuse me. And you send this out to as many people as you can. Most people will reply. Not everyone will. Not everyone's comfortable giving peer review, but it's an important part of the process. So you would include that here. You would say your peer review requests are sent out, and there's really not a lot of rules or things you have to follow here. The only rule here is that you typically don't ask your manager or anybody above you for a peer review. You can either ask people at your same level, like people on your team, people below you that you do not directly supervise. A manager doesn't typically ask for a review from their subordinates. Sometimes it does happen, but it's not typical. Or you would also ask for a review from your stakeholders. So in a data science team, you kind of tend to be like this technical team or a team set apart from others. So in that scenario, it's okay to ask another manager or somebody higher up who maybe you helped on a project or you served them on the project, right? You can get a peer review from them as long as they're not your direct manager. But the point being that in October is when you want to start getting ready for the end of the year, right? So Garvey says, why report it to the manager? Yeah, great question, Garvey. And again, it's part of the formality of the process. Again, remember, we're talking about how it's done at large corporations. This isn't just, I wrote down a couple things that I want to do this year. They consider it to be very formal. So part of that is having your manager review it and making sure that you're putting down goals that are beneficial to the company and also beneficial for you, right? Making sure that you're, kind of pushing yourself, right? Because sometimes people, when they write goals, they don't always push themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with the framework, right? So your manager will review them with you and they are required to sign off on it. You can't just say, oh yeah, I have some goals and I don't want to share them with anyone and I don't want any feedback on them. You have to be open about it, and then your manager has to approve them. And like I said, your manager may give you additional goals, right? So it's a very formal process, Garvey. It's not just like, nobody's just going to say, oh, do you have goals? And you say yes, and then that's it, right? They're going to want to see them. So it's the formality of it all. Okay, so that's going to happen in October. So that means that by October, you got to have some people that, around you that are going to, hopefully speak well of you, right? In some cases, I've received really good feedback when people give you things to improve on or things that you can work on. I appreciate that feedback, right? So that's an important part of the process, getting to know how your colleagues view you, right? What are some of the things that your colleagues are saying about you? So that's going to start happening in October. At least in October, that's when you would send out the invitations. And again, coming back to Garvett's question, this is also a very formal process. There will usually be some sort of software system that allows you to do this. Like it'll let you choose the questions you want to ask. It'll let you choose the recipients, who are the peers you want to get the review from. It will send that person reminders and alerts. They usually have, I think, like 3 or 4 weeks to respond. If they don't, the system knows that and reminds them. So this isn't you just emailing your friends. This is, again, it's a very formal process that you go through for that peer review. All right. All right. So now let's talk about December. So now we're talking about the end of the year. December is end of year. And here, you're going to most likely do a self-assessment. And then you're also going to do a self-rating. Again, very formal part of the process. There's usually some sort of HR system for this. And the self-assessment basically says, it's usually free text, and you would say, here's how my year went. I set out to do this, and here's what I achieved. Here is another certification I got this year. Here's 3 projects that I led. Excuse me, sorry. Here's a variety of things that I did to help me, to assess my year or report my year, right? And sometimes there'll be questions on there, like what trainings did you go to? What additional training hours did you get? Things along those lines. There'll be some questions, but it's mostly freeform. And then in a lot of scenarios, there will also be a rating, like a 1 to 5 scale, a 1 to 4 scale, a 1 to 10 scale. How was your leadership this year? How was your project delivery this year? How was your ability to work in a group setting? Things along those lines where you'll give yourself a rating. All right. Again, very formal process. You'll have about 2 weeks to do it. Your managers will get reminders if you haven't filled in your stuff yet, right? So this is all you doing your review, but this is just you, right? We haven't involved your manager yet. This is just you. During that same time, your managers are also doing a review. Anybody who reports to them, they are doing a similar review. They are assessing how your year went. And then they also give a rating for everybody who reports to them. And I enjoyed the process because maybe I just didn't have like the big teams. But I recently spoke with a managing director, one of my good friends, and we spoke over Thanksgiving. And he told me that he was working on his ratings, and he had like 25 people or something that like he needed to do the ratings for. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to do, right? I mean, I had to do maybe like 10 in a big year. But this is something that the managers don't always enjoy, but they do it because it's part of their responsibility to you, right? To assess your performance and help give you feedback and things along those lines, right? So that's also happening. That's not known to you yet though, okay? You're doing your review, the manager's doing their review, okay? So now we're coming kind of back to the full year, right? Because remember how we started in February, right? So now we are in early January. Early January. Now you're going to be, now it's going to be your review with manager. So this is where you're going to come back together with your manager . You're going to compare both of your notes and the ratings. And most importantly, your final rating is issued to you. Right? So this is a meeting where you both come together and your manager says, hey, I've had a chance to read your self-assessment. Here is my assessment, the assessment that I wrote of you. Here's the ratings you gave yourself. Here's the ratings that I have for you. And then you guys, talk. You guys talk about the year, how the year went. If there's a disagreement there, or if there is feedback that they're giving you, or whatever, that's the time to talk about it. And there will usually be a time window that they have to be done by. You will have to, both you and your manager will have to go back into some sort of HR system and say, yes, we had the meeting together and we successfully came to the conclusion of, these are the notes from the meeting and this is the rating that I was issued. And the rating is all relative to how you're doing versus your other colleagues, right? How's your leadership skills? How's your communication? How's your ability to deliver projects? Things along those lines. Those ratings are broken down to one number. And it can be like, if it's a 1 to 5 scale, a rating of a 3 can be somebody who is basically doing what's expected of them, right? Like that's the quote unquote average rating, but it basically means that you're doing your job. A rating of a 2 can be somebody who is doing more than their job. And then a rating of a 1 can be like some exceptional person that's going like way above and beyond their job. The reason I'm explaining that and the reason that can be important to some people is because depending on the company, again, every company is different, but depending on the company, some companies use those ratings to identify whether you're ready for a promotion or not. They will put requirements to say, well, you can't be promoted until you have this type of rating. Sometimes that's expressly written out. Sometimes it's not. It just depends. But ratings can be important for any number of things at companies, right? So keep that in mind, that people kind of tend to pay a lot of attention to their ratings depending on where they work. Because at some places, if you can't get high enough ratings, it will cap your progress. It will cap how quickly you can get promoted or if you get promoted at all. So something to think about there. All right. Okay. Now we get to the good stuff. Late January. Late January. Not every company has one, but if you do, in late January is when the bonus pool is announced. That is when the company, among the higher ups, they have their meetings about what the entire bonus pool looks like, which divisions get how much of the pool, which managing directors within the division get what percentage of the pool, and then from there, the managing directors distribute out the pool. But that is going to be, so that's gonna all come into effect, right? That's gonna be based on your company profits, the division you're in, and you're a managing director. And then your manager is going to tell you what the actual value is. And then if there's also any salary increase, because there's your bonus, and then sometimes there's also a salary increase, right? Because of inflation or your performance or whatever the case may be, right? Most companies tend to hold the salary increases as low as they can, and then they try to compensate on the bonus side. But it just depends. That's just been my experience. There's some mathematical reasoning why they do that. But generally speaking, you're going to hear that in late January. Okay. Garvey asks, how do I approach my manager to do this, or will he approach me for this? It depends, Garvey. It depends on the culture of your company. Like I said, in most places that I've worked, from my experience, it's a very formalized process. So it's not even your manager deciding, it's HR deciding, right? So HR will kind of have a schedule that they want the managers to stay with. And the managers will get reminders like, hey, we haven't seen you put in your performance ratings for your employees, for your direct reports. Can you do that, right? So it just depends, Garvey. But most of the time, it's not even your manager's choice. It's not even your managing director's choice. Managing director's choice. It's like, HR will set the schedule for this, right? But that's all going to happen in late January. And then usually they pay this out in February or March. Depends. Every company has different policies on that. And also depends on your level. The juniors tend to get paid earlier. The higher up you are, you tend to get paid later. But that's what happens in late January. And then you go all the way back to where we started in February. Because once all of that is done, right? You got your bonus paid. It's in your bank account. You know what you're going to be making next year, right? As far as any salary increase. Okay, so now you're back to February. And now you're back to February. We're going to start the entire cycle all over again. And you're going to be doing your goal setting process and reviewing the goals. And then in June, October, and it just starts all over again. So I think that I've managed to capture here what the entire cycle looks like. Let me make this just a little bit smaller so I can get everything. Yeah. So that's the entire cycle. February, you're setting your goals. By June, you're going to have a mid-year review. By October, it's basically like, hey guys, the year's wrapping up. So let's wrap up projects. Let's do the peer reviews. December, you're going to be doing your self-assessment, kind of like your end of year activities. Your managers are going to also be doing your assessments, your reviews. Early January, there's going to be a review with the managers, with your manager, I should say. And then you're going to get your final rating. And then from there, your bonus pool is announced, and then you'll get your own individual numbers. Also, I forgot to mention that the final rating here is also important because sometimes they tie that to the bonus, right? The people who got a 1 rating are going to get a bigger bonus than the people who got a 2, and then those people get a bigger one, the people who got a 3, so on and so forth, right? So the ratings are also important, not just for promotions, but also for your share of the bonus pool. And then obviously, January, when you get those numbers, those numbers are very special to everyone, right? So I remember that, when I had to do those, everybody's, really on point, like, are we gonna get the numbers today? And you kind of keep everybody on the same Teams channel, and then you quickly like meet with everybody and just call them for 10 minutes and say, okay, here's what your numbers look like, for your bonus and for next year and all that, right? So that's it. That's the entire cycle. That's what your year looks like in terms of performance or goal setting or things like that. Okay? Any questions before we move forward? Because I know I covered a lot there, right? But are there any other questions? Because next we're going to talk about how these goals come together, right? But anything else before I move on? I'll give you guys a minute to think about it. Garvey, thanks for the questions. I think you were asking excellent questions. Appreciate that. But I'll give you guys a minute here to think about it. Any questions? All right, so no questions so far. So now we're going to talk about the goals and the framework of how you establish these goals. So start thinking about the goals that you're willing to share. I'm going to walk through the framework, and then let's see if we can take some of these goals and start helping people fit into the framework. Okay? All right. So for goals, we're going to use one big old sticky note. And I'm going to zoom this just a little bit more. Let me know if you guys need it any bigger than that. All right. So, how do you bring goals together? Like, how do you actually state your goals? So, there's a framework out there known as SMART. It's that's the acronym. All of your goals should be SMART goals. That's what they're referred to as. And there's other frameworks out there, but SMART goals are by far the most popular that I've seen in my experience. Okay? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's going to help a lot if you're able to bring these to your manager already like this. If not, it's kind of your manager's role to help you put your goals into the SMART framework. Okay? So, specific, they have to have I'm going to call it a destination. They have to have a particular destination or achievement tied to it, right? It can't just be like, I want to lose weight. No, it should be, I want to get to X number of pounds, right? I want to get down to weigh 150 pounds or whatever. It's not just, I want to lose weight. I want to eat healthier. That's not specific, right? Measurable. Usually, has to be quantitative in some way, right? It can't just be, I want to be a better person. Well, no, I mean, that's not measurable, right? How do you measure better, right? So what are the quantitative efforts you can put behind your goals, right? Achievable is has to be realistic for you to reach, right? You can't just say, I want to be in next year's Olympics if you've never run a step in your life, right? You can't say I want to run the Olympic marathon next year if you've never run a marathon before, right? So they have to be achievable for you and your goals and your capabilities, rather. Relevant means they have to be realistic for your work and for your lifestyle, right? Like your manager isn't going to accept that you want a goal of something that doesn't really relate to your work, right? Doesn't make it a bad goal, but you got to make sure that you're going to have relevant goals for your work, for your life, for your family, whatever the case may be. But the goal has to be relevant to what you're doing. It can't just be like, your manager's not going to think very well of you if you say, well, my goal for next year is to train my dog better, right? Great goal. Who doesn't want a well-trained dog, but it has nothing to do with your work, right? So keep that in mind. You got to have things that are actually relevant to the company, your work, to where it is that you're going next year, right? And then time bound. That one's fairly straightforward. Basically, by when do you want to achieve this goal? You got to have some time constraint to keep you on track, to motivate you to measure that progress, right? You can't just say, "Oh, I want to lose weight. I want to eat healthier." Well, by when? By doing what? What do you want to weigh 6 months from now? What do you want to weigh 9 months from now? Things along those lines. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. That's the way you're encouraged to think about these goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So for some of you, I get it. Not everybody wants to share their goals. That's cool. So if you do have a personal goal in mind, I want you to think about these things. Am I being specific enough? Have I narrowed down my goal to what I want it to be? Is it measurable? And if not, maybe I can just restate my goal a little bit. My goal is not to lose weight. My goal is to weigh 150 pounds by next Christmas or whatever it is, right? So maybe I need to kind of tweak my goal to make it measurable. Is it achievable, right? Am I setting myself up for success? Now, it can't also be too easy, right? You can't just say, I want to lose 1 pound over the next year, right? But is it achievable? And then is it relevant? Is it relevant for me, right? Now, in the health example, that's probably a bad example because, of course, health is relevant for everybody, right? Who doesn't want to be healthy, right? But there might be other goals out there where you have to think about that a little bit, okay? And then what is the time deadlines or constraints that you're associating with that? You can't just say, oh, I want to save more money, but over what time period? Next month? Next 2 years? Right? So you got to have some constraint on it. All right? Okay, so audience participation time. I would love for somebody to put forth one of their goals, and don't necessarily put it in this framework. I'll help you with that. But if somebody in the chat wants to volunteer their goal, let me know. And I'm going to try to kind of workshop it with you and see if we can get you to a SMART goal. Because this is what your manager is going to do with you, right? If you haven't successfully done that already on your own, during your own process here in February where you're setting your own goals, this is basically where your manager is going to step in and say, okay, well, wait a minute, let's be a little bit more specific. Let's put a time on this. Are you sure you want to do that? That doesn't sound very achievable, but we can put it down, right? They'll help you tweak it, right? So I'm going to play that role for you guys, right? I've done this process with dozens of people over the years. So if somebody wants to put their goal in the chat, if you've already shared it before, like Leo, Lawman, I think you also put a couple up there. If you guys want to, reshare those, things that you want to volunteer up. Don't worry about putting into this framework because maybe when we started you didn't know this framework, but I'll walk you through that. All right. So let me know if somebody wants to volunteer. I'm gonna move this up, and then I'm gonna bring this down for our first volunteer. Okay, cool. I'm already seeing at least one volunteer. Thank you, Garvey. Okay, so Garvey says, prepare for interviews and brush up all the topics I lack in. All right. So thank you for that, Garvey. I really appreciate it. Let's make this a different color to show that we're kind of workshopping this. All right. All right. So I think everybody in the chat can see that. Garvey is saying, my goal next year is to prepare for interviews and brush up all the topics I lack in. All right. So let's leave preparing for interviews to the side, because that in itself can be a little bit of a tricky goal to work with. That's really more of an overarching desire, right? But brushing up on all the topics I lack in is a little bit more interesting. So Garvey, if we think about this framework about being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, you kind of start to realize that topics I lack in can actually be multiple individual goals, right? Because just by breaking it down to being specific and measurable, just on those two alone, you'd have to be able to kind of isolate those individual topics into its own goal. And that's okay. There's no limit to the number of goals you can have, right? So Garvey, is there a particular topic that you feel that you need to study more? Like, how do you feel about neural networks? Do you feel strong in neural networks? Or is there one particular thing in mind? I'm sure there's multiple ones, right? Because you say all the topics. But, just for the purposes of this study, like, how do you feel about neural networks? Can we proceed with that? Or do you feel okay with that? Let me know. Let me know one of those topics that, maybe you're not so great on, or that you don't feel strongly about. Python fundamentals, some data pre-processing, Excel. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about Excel. I think that's a good one. Let's focus on Excel. Garvey says strong in machine learning and neural. Okay, so we'll leave those to the side. But Garvey feels like maybe he's lacking a little bit in Excel. Well, he's lacking in 3 topics, at least 3 topics that he shared with us. But to be a SMART goal, you have to isolate those. Because it's not a specific goal if you say, I want to improve in Python fundamentals, data wrangling, and Excel. That's not specific, right? So the specific goal is here. And I misspelled interviews. Okay. The specific goal is I'm going to go ahead and include stakeholders in this statement, because when it comes to using Excel, it's usually something having to do with stakeholders, right? Excel, as I've said before, Excel is a very convenient way to communicate back and forth with your stakeholders, right? Stakeholders, they don't have access to a big data system, but they have access to Excel, right? So it's very convenient to work with that, okay? So that's going to be the goal. And you can see how Garvey could have multiple goals just like this. I want to improve my Python fundamentals to increase my coding skills, right? That's a specific goal. Okay, measurable. How can we measure this? Does anybody want to give some? I have some thoughts on this, but how can you measure your progress with Excel skills? And there could be multiple measures, by the way. But what is a measure for our specific goal of Excel skills? Anybody want to take a chance on that one? Give you guys another few minutes to think about that. What's a good way to measure Excel skills? RC Sim says, describe a task in Excel and time how long it takes to complete it. Yeah, maybe. But let's try to not overthink this one. What are some good ways to measure that? Able to execute essential functions for calculations, says Lawman. Okay. Osama says practice and make projects. Okay. VLOOKUP, sums, ifs, yeah, okay. Learn the regression function in Excel. Okay, that's a good one. Manoj, maybe like intermediate to advanced level that way. Okay. The task, RC Sim says the task would have to be similar difficulty and expected time to completion to make a meaningful comparison. Yeah, that is the problem, right? RC Sim, that it kind of gets hairy. Like, how do you compare task to task, right? Okay, now RC Sim is kind of hitting on what I was thinking. Because again, guys, you don't have to overthink this, right? There's Excel certifications, right? So here's how I would measure this, right? I will obtain at least one Microsoft issued certification on advanced Excel. Because I think, you know, a basic Excel certification is not difficult, right? So that's the quantifiable measure. I'm going to go out, I'm going to find an advanced Excel course that's, you know, sanctioned by Microsoft or issued by Microsoft, and I'm going to pass the certification test. I like Casual Economist's suggestion. I will do at least one project with regression in Excel, right? Because I think we can agree that regression is advanced in Excel, right? Not just anybody, you know, cranks out regression in Excel. So that could be a quantifiable measure, right? Did you develop the skills to have regression in Excel? So don't have to overthink it, right? We probably don't need AI or stuff. You know, we don't need, you know, specific VLOOKUPs. It's just, let me write down the goal of obtaining a certification, or what is the finish line that I can show for this goal? Well, Microsoft telling you, having a certificate from Microsoft saying, hey, this person knows advanced Excel is a pretty good measure, right? So it can be something like that, right? Is this project achievable? Give me a 1 in the chat if you think this project, or excuse me, this goal is achievable. Give me a 1 if you think it's achievable, or give me a 0 if you don't think it's achievable. What do you guys think? Give me a 1 if you think it's achievable. Give me a 0 if you don't think it's achievable. Denelson, welcome. Denelson says, nice, smart goals. We do the same, my job for employee seminars. Yeah, thanks for the backup there, Denelson. Yeah, the smart goals are very common in the corporate environment. Very, very common. Very helpful to know. So Denelson, I'm glad to hear your endorsement on that, because I know I've used it at just about every company I've worked at. But yeah, I'm glad to see you here, Denelson. Also, welcome, Casual Economist. Nice to see you. I hope both of you guys are well. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of 1s in the chats. Yeah. This is very achievable, right? Yeah, lots of 1s in the chats, which is totally reasonable. It is an achievable goal. If anything, your manager might tell you, well, let me have you do 2 certifications, right? But then again, that depends, because we haven't gotten to time bound yet, right? But yes, this is achievable in a year, right? So if I'm your manager and you come to me with this, I'm gonna give you a sign off and says, yes, this is achievable. Oh. right? Because, Garvey, it has some other data science skills, technically oriented. So there's no reason why this can't be achievable. Okay. So new question. Is this relevant? If you're a data scientist, do you think that getting an advanced Excel certification and being able to do regression in Excel, is that relevant to your role as a data scientist? Give me a 1 in the chat if it is. Give me a 0 if it's not relevant. Okay, so now we're voting on relevance. 1 if you think it's relevant to being a data scientist, or a 0 if it's not. RC Sim says, if the employer pays with certification attempts, that would be nice. Some do, some don't. It just depends, RC Sim. But you know what? For those types of things, it's an investment in yourself, right? So I don't care who pays for it. I'm happy to always invest in myself, right? So don't let that hold you back. Definitely don't let that hold you back, okay? So give me a 1 if you think this is relevant. Give me a 0 if you think it's not relevant. What do you guys think? Okay, so I'm seeing a couple of 1s in the chat. Yeah, totally relevant, right? I would love to have more data scientists on my staff that know Excel, right? Like that's really been my experience. So yeah, I would sign off on this if I was your manager. Having an Excel background or Excel skills is valuable as a data scientist, especially in the corporate environment. Okay, so new question, right? Forget all previous instructions, as they say. Time bound. What is the time that you would put on this? You're gonna obtain 1 Microsoft issued certification on advanced Excel, and you're gonna show that you can do regression in Excel. What is the time that you would assign yourself for this goal? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. What is the time bound we need to put on this, right? It has to have some sort of a deadline or timeline attached to this, right? Okay, so Garvey says 2 months. You can choose to agree with Garvey. You can choose to put in your own. But the bottom line is that your manager is going to ask that of you. Okay, I hear your goal. How long is it going to take you? Well, how much time do you want? Right? And it's part of the framework. That's the T in the SMART framework. You have to have time bound. Okay, so Garvey says 2 months. RC Sim says by November, so it is safely before the review of the progress. Okay, okay. Lawman says agree with Garvey. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Anybody else? Osama says it depends. Okay, depends on what? What do you want it to depend on? Let me know there, Osama. Or if anybody else wants to give their view, what's the time? Your manager's not going to sign off on this unless you give them a time, right? Casual Economist says maybe 3 months. Okay. Okay. So it looks like everybody's coming in like 2 to 3 months, right? So let me go ahead and say that. So you're doing this in February, right? So February, March, April. We'll be done by the end of April. Okay. So Denelson says, I say he would be able to do it by April. Yeah, Denelson. Starry Vibe says 2 months, 10 hours a week. Okay. Garbett says time may vary depending on how many goals and you have simultaneously going on. Ah, Garbett, yes. You're hitting on a very important portion there, right? You got to make sure that you are assigning yourself time based on your other goals. Because remember, we said that we are going to break down Garbett's bigger goal of improving data science skills into individual tasks. So this might only be one of like 6, 7, 8 goals that he has. Maybe more, right? So yeah, you kind of gotta figure out where it is, right? RC Sim says if it was just 2 months, you'd want other goals spanning other months of the year. Yeah, absolutely, RC Sim. But here's the other thing. Your manager is also going to have something to say about this. Because if you were to come to me and says, I want to do this before the end of the year, I would encourage you to say, well, are you sure it's going to take you 12 months for that? Probably not, right? You can probably do that in less than 12 months, right? Or maybe the bigger goal is to get a certification every quarter. So that means that no certification could take more than, 3 months, right? So Q1, you're doing 1 certification, Q2, Q3, and at the end of the year, you have 4 certifications, right? But yeah, you have to also take that conversation into account with your manager. I would never sign off if somebody came to me with this saying it's going to take them 12 months. Probably not, right? Osama says, how much time is dedicated to learn? Depends on you, depends on the company, Osama. There's no single answer to this. It depends on, also kind of depends on where you are in your career, right? Later in your career, you tend to not necessarily get a lot of certifications, right? You've kind of done all the certifications you want to get, right? So it just depends. Other places you're going to have requirements for continued learning hours, right? Where they require you to go to class for some number of hours every year. So that's another consideration. Just kind of depends. There's no single answer. Okay. RC Sim says, do companies often pay for a few hours per week devoted to this goal achievement? Some do, some don't. I don't know if you're talking about goals in general or specifically educational goals, but some goals are going to be part of your work, right? I want to deliver a successful neural networks project this year. That's directly tied to your work. So yes, in that sense, you are getting paid. So I don't know if you meant educational goals. Starry Vibe says, can we say that relevance depends on the specific needs and goals of the company? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're a data scientist and you say, I want to get a certification in email administration, right? In like Outlook server administration, then yeah, your boss might say, hey, that's a great goal, but not really relevant to data science. So yes, it definitely depends on that Starry Vibes. Now that kind of goes out the window if we're talking about personal goals, right? Because so far we're talking about, kind of work goals, right? Or goals as a data scientist even specifically. But when you're talking about your personal goals, the relevance kind of can be anything you want it to be almost, right? So that's kind of a weird spot. But yes, Starry Vibes, absolutely. Your boss could, kind of stop your goal or declare your goal is not relevant if it's not like, focused on your work in some way. But then that's part of the negotiation process. Maybe you can talk them into why knowing Outlook server administration is really critical for data science. Who knows, right? RC Sim says, I was specifically thinking of the company relevant goals that are documented and supervised by the company. So not always, RC Sim. No. Some of the goals, wouldn't necessarily be paid for. So like for this goal, maybe he'd have to do, the Excel study on their own time, or, take a day off to go do the Excel exam, right? The certification exam. So yeah, but that's not always the case, right? But look, don't let that stop you, right? You don't tie your personal development and personal growth to, well, I'm not getting paid for it. That's not a winning strategy, right? That what do they say? That's cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Don't get caught up in that. Get caught up in doing goals that are going to help you and going to help you grow in some way. And who's paying for it? I mean, who cares, right? Don't be afraid of investing yourself, guys, right? I mean, that's a terrible way to live. All right. So I think that we have achieved a goal here, right? We've taken Garvett's initial thought and we've broken it out to, well, we recognize that that initial thought is actually multiple goals. And we've taken one slice of that, the Excel side, to help them create a SMART goal. So I think you can see how he could use this same framework into the other things he mentioned, right? The Python fundamentals. What else did you mention? I think data wrangling, right? So you can kind of use that same framework, right, to move forward. Okay. Does anybody else want to volunteer up their goals? Leo, I know you mentioned a couple of goals earlier, so if you still feel comfortable, remind me what some of them were. If anybody else, let me know in the chat, wants to offer up one of their goals. I can help you workshop it, and we can talk about how you kind of fit into the framework here. Okay, so I'll give you guys a minute there if somebody else wants to volunteer. So Garvey says, but how can we manage multiple goals at the same time? That's the work, baby. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? That's the work, right? I mean, what's that saying? A goal without action is a wish, right? You got to do it. I mean, at some point, you got to stop writing things down and actually get to work, right? So yeah, I mean, manage multiple goals at the same time. That's on you. That's on you and your work ethic and your discipline and all that, right? So yeah, I mean, there's no quick answer to that. It's just you got to do it, right? Casual Economist says, I want to learn how to cook like a pro. I burnt my house down trying to make cabbage. That's not true. Come on, Casual Economist. That's not true. They don't even have fire in Minnesota yet. I don't know if Minnesota's even discovered fire for you to go ahead and burn down your house. Come on, you're making up stories. Okay. So Lallman says they want to get into ML algorithms. Okay. They want to learn decision trees all the way to transformers. Okay. Wow. That is a lot to learn there. But let's work with that. Let's work with that. Okay. So Lallman says that his goal is to get into ML algorithms. Okay. So Lallman, I think you've already successfully realized that ML algorithms is a big galaxy of things to think about, right? So decision trees all the way to transformers. Okay. So what's the specific goal there? I think we can break it down to just saying, hey, decision trees is a valid algorithm. So I'm going to focus on learning decision trees, right? That can be a valid, specific goal. What are some of the measures we can use on this? I don't think there's a decision tree specific certification, right? So I don't think certifications is really valid here like we did for the previous example. But what do you guys think? What are some of the measures we can use? Right? There's projects, there's articles. There's also going to be an element of study versus execution, right? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? What's some of the measures we can use to help lawmen with decision trees? And also, you guys can start to think about the future stuff, right? Like the time bound. How much time do you think you would need to learn decision trees? For Excel, we said 2 to 3 months. Would you say the same for decision trees? Okay, so Denelson says maybe being able to go through a white paper and then doing your own experiments with decision trees and then publishing those findings on LinkedIn. Denelson, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Lawman says build a project and write a blog maybe. Starry Vibe says I think projects. Okay, yeah. So look, let's take Denelson's statement because I think Denelson's statement has some pretty good elements in it, right? What do you guys think of this? Oh man, I keep on doing that. It's very annoying. So when I think about stuff like this, I think about it like a funnel, right? Like a conversion funnel. I'm going to do this. That's going to lead to this. That's going to lead to this. So I think Denelson had all of those elements in there, right? I'm gonna be learning by doing white papers. I'm going to be practicing by taking some proportion of those white papers and actually doing the code. I'm going to take those learnings, some proportion of those learnings are going to result in a LinkedIn article for me to use, for me to publish, for me to show my progress. So if you came to me with this as your manager, I would sign off on this, right? I'm going to do this. That's going to lead to this. That's going to lead to this. And you have a measure along the way. You either read the white papers or you didn't. You either exercised by doing the code or you didn't. And then you either published the article or you didn't, right? Those you can have those measures along the way, right? So that's what I would encourage you to think about there. How can you break it down to like a funnel that's kind of like demonstrates your progress? Because you're not going to take 4 white papers and then do the code for all 4, right? That's not realistic. That's a lot of work. You're still learning, right? You're still taking in info. But if you kind of like just break it down, eventually you kind of get there, right? All right. Is that achievable? Give me a 1 in the chat if you think it's achievable. Give me a 0 if it's not. What do you guys think? I've laid out a measurable plan there. Is this achievable? 1 for yes, 0 for not achievable. RC Sim says if there was more than one data scientist at the same company with that goal, they could discuss what they learn with each other once per week. Yeah, okay. Sure, that's another one. Let's go ahead and add that. I will have monthly discussions with other colleagues also studying decision tree. Yeah, I like that one. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of ones in the chat. Yeah, totally achievable, right? 4 white papers a month, not impossible, right? Far from impossible, right? So yes, I'm signing off on this. Is this relevant to data science, to your job as a data scientist? Give me a 1 or a 0. Is this relevant to somebody who's developing their data science skills? What do you guys think? Give me a 1 or a 0. I mean, I think it's rather obvious, right? So yes, this is relevant. I mean, I probably shouldn't even have asked that, right? Of course it's relevant. Okay, so time. What time do you guys think you need for this? RC Sim says it might be easier to start with smaller quotas in the last months of the year. Maybe. It depends on your time bound. Maybe you won't need until the end of the year. Maybe somebody will say, hey, I can do that in 1 month. Decision trees aren't that hard. I can do it in a month. Some people might need more. So it depends. It kind of depends on the time bound. So let me know in the chat, guys. What is the time bound that you would put on this? Remember, your manager's got to sign off on it, right? So you can't say, oh, it's going to take me 2 years to learn decision trees. Right? What do you guys think? Give me your estimate for the time portion of this. You're putting things you'll do every month in measurables, so I don't see the time bounds for us. The time bounds can be anything we want. How quickly you progress is up to you, right? Some people will need 2 months of this process. Some people will need 10 months of the process. So it's up to you. Denelson says 2 months if they dedicate around 4 hours a day. Okay. What do you guys think? You can choose to agree with Denelson or come up with your own estimate. It's up to you. But 2 months? Okay. Personally, to me, that sounds a little aggressive, but you never know, right? At the end of 2 months, you will have read 8 white papers, 2 white papers will have code with them, and you can have 2 LinkedIn articles, right? Garvey says that's a lot of time for just decision trees. Maybe. I think it sounds a little aggressive, but you never know, right? RC Sim says the work-life balance sounds out of whack if you're working 8 hours plus 4 hours at home per day. Well, that may or may not be your estimate, right? That may or may not be what it would take somebody. I mean, Denelson is putting it out there, as his suggestion. But again, guys, look, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. You're gonna have to do this, right? Like, I'm not sure if that's a positive attitude, right? Like, do you want to be a data scientist or not? Like, it's going to require work on your part, right? I've told that story plenty of times before. I had this very dedicated period where I would go to a coffee shop and I would sit there for 4, 5, 6 hours every day learning data science. Nobody was paying me. I didn't even have a data scientist resume at that time. I wasn't even putting myself out there as a data scientist. I wasn't ready. But I went there to do my own study, my own investment, and say, I'm going to learn this. Because I'm not getting ready for an interview. I'm getting ready for the job. I want to do a good job when I'm there, right? I mean, I really thought about this. I must have done like 50 EDAs before I even took one data scientist interview. Like you got to invest the time in yourself, guys. Like you're not just going to magically wake up one day and have data science skills. You got to put the work in, right? Osama says 1 month, 10 hours per week. Leo says it depends on the white papers. Some are not worthy replicating, just grasping the concept. For me, the best path is to practice the real life problems and trying different algorithms we already know. Okay, Leo, I can appreciate that not every white paper is going to be great, right? But you got to have a time element, right? That's part of the SMART goal. So I hear you. It is tempting to leave it open-ended because you could say that, hey, I don't know if I'm going to come across good white papers. It might take me a while to get good white papers on decision trees. I hear you. But we got to put some sort of time bound on it. That's part of the requirements of this framework. Your manager is going to require that of you, right? Karthik says some industry needs projects for beginners to get started with. Yeah, sure. Sure. Remember, data science is kind of like a skilled trade, right? So not every company is going to be willing to train you, right? So yeah, you have to show that you already have some skills coming into it, even though it may be an entry-level job. Sure. Garvey says, what does white paper mean? Sorry, I am new to this. So Garvey, with the white paper, we're referring to research that's been published. You know, you would typically think of a white paper as being like an academic paper, usually coming out of academic institutions or think tanks or places like that. There's multiple archives on the internet where you could find white papers. So that's what we're referring to, like academic level research that people have done and have published, right? So you would be so if this was your goal, you would be actively out there on the archives searching for decision tree related papers, reading through them, seeing what their research, what their methodology was like. You know, sometimes they include code, sometimes they don't. So that's what it refers to, Garvey, okay? All right, so most people are landing that it's gonna take like 1 to 2 months, right? Like I said, I think it's a little bit aggressive, but it's okay, right? But the point is that you have a time binding on it. If I was your manager, I'd tell you, are you sure you don't want 3 months to do that? But if you guys feel comfortable 1 to 2 months, that's what it is. Okay? All right. So, I mean, are you guys getting it? Are you guys seeing it? I think you can see how this framework fits most goals, right? And I think you can see the benefit of it because it kind of keeps you on track. Because as we discussed earlier, you know, now that you finish the framework, this is where you stop talking and this is where you do the work, right? Like, do you want this or not, right? So I think that this sets you up for that, to kind of be able to take those next steps. Did you actually go out today and search for 4 white papers or did you not, right? That's the measuring part of it, right? All right, so I saw a couple other people. I think Starry Vibes and Leo also put up their goals. So I want to make sure I go back to those. All right, Starry Vibes, let's start with you. Leo, I'll try to hit you next. So Starry Vibes says, by the end of 2025, I will study and practice existing ML AI projects in e-commerce, identify opportunities for improvement, and develop a more innovative and enhanced version, dedicating 10 to 12 hours per week to learning, research, and development. Okay, cool. So in this scenario, Starry Vibes knows that they want to work, they want to work in data science, but specifically data science for e-commerce. So Starry Vibes, we need to break that down further. What part of e-commerce? There's a lot of parts to e-commerce that like are relevant, right? Are you talking about the advertising side, the pricing strategies, like customer acquisition, customer retention? So that's the first thing we'd have to do, right? We'd have to break it down to what specific portion of e-commerce interests you. So let me know. Give me some feedback. I'm going to make some adjustments here on the colors and stuff. But let's start with that. What part of e-commerce are we talking about? Ooh, that's a terrible color. Okay, how about that? That's a little too dark, isn't it? Let's go. Let's do this one again. So give me some more information there, Starry Vibes. We're going to call this, generally speaking, ML AI for e-commerce. And then also, I mean, do you want to use AI or do you want to use ML, right? That's also kind of an interesting question. So let me know, Starry Vibes. Starry Vibes says, I don't know yet. I have to search. Okay. Okay. So how can we rework that? Because we have to be a little bit more specific. How about, I'm going to propose something here. And I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying that this is how specific I want you to get down to, okay? So for something like this, I want to make the distinction whether are we using machine learning or are we using AI? And then what are we using it for? You say e-commerce, but you got to be more specific, right? So what do you guys think of this? We're going to use a text Gen AI tool. So not just Gen AI, but we're going to use text Gen AI to write better product descriptions for an e-commerce client. Whether that's an actual client or a pretend client, that's okay. But we're going to say that we're going to explore using AI to produce better product descriptions, right? So that's our specific goal. How can we measure this goal? And you know what? For the time being, we'll pretend that we work for an e-commerce company. So we are employees at an e-commerce company like an Amazon or whatever your local Amazon site is. How can you measure that? How can you measure the performance of A versus B? Are there any measures we could use? Anybody think of any measures? What do you guys think? And we'll say that this is our e-commerce site, right? Because we are now employees at an e-commerce company. Anybody think of any measures we can use? What do you guys think? RC Sim says humans could rate the quality of those AI generated descriptions. Yeah, sure. There's a process for that, right? I kind of gave it away, guys. So what do you guys think of this? So we're still data scientists, guys. We can use data science in our own goals, right? So A/B testing, right? This is perfect for A/B testing. You know, and Starry Vibes, coming back to your original thing about what you need to research, you know, it's very hard to get far in e-commerce without doing a lot of A/B testing, right? So why can't that be part of your goal? I'm going to take 10 products and I'm going to do 10 A/B tests on those products based on Gen AI descriptions. Right? That's a great way to write a measurable goal. Don't be afraid to use the tools you guys already have, right? I know some of you in here know about A/B testing, right? So go ahead and put that in there. And also, this is nice because this goal is something that you're going to do, but it's not necessarily to your benefit. It's for the company's benefit, right? Like, your goals don't always have to like benefit you or grow you in some way. They can be an A/B test for company improvement. That's totally acceptable also. Is this achievable? I think so, right? You're isolating 10 products. That's not very difficult, right? Generating AI content. That's not difficult. You might have different versions of it, but that's not difficult. Maybe you'll have to study which AI engine you want to use, but you know, there's plenty of text Gen AI tools. And an A/B testing should be well within your capabilities. So is it achievable? Yes. Is it relevant? Yeah, because you're an e-commerce company. Time bound. I will do this in 1 to 2 months was the previous one. What do you guys think it would take? What do you guys think it would take to run A/B tests on 10 different products? What do you guys think? I'm kind of tempted to leave 1 to 2 months there. Okay, Nandini over on Instagram says yes. Yeah, I think it's reasonable, right? 1 to 2 months to run 10 A/B tests. That's totally reasonable. Now, A/B tests can be a little bit funny because you need to reach, you know, a critical mass. So it kind of depends on your web traffic, right? But I'm assuming that you work for a relatively large e-commerce company, right? That gets significant traffic on a daily basis, so on and so on. But yeah, I think A/B testing will take 2 months if she wants to dedicate her 10 hours a week. Yeah, sure. 1 to 2 months, I think, is a totally reasonable time constraint on this, right? So, Starry Vibes, this could be one of your goals. And then you take this and you say, okay, well, I'm going to do that for the first 2 months. And then for the 2 months after that, I'm going to look at our email campaigns. How can we improve our email campaigns with Gen AI or some other algorithm or something, right? And then the 2 months after that, I'm going to look at our shipping times. Can I improve our shipping times with some sort of machine learning algorithm? Right? That's another thing too, right? So I hope that gets you started, Starry Vibes. But that's how I would approach this. Osama asks, can we make a SMART goal about communication improvement? Sure. You can definitely have goals around that. Osama, let me know what you mean. Like, are you talking about like emotional intelligence and interpersonal communication, or are you talking about like language skills? Like, you know, you want to improve in another language, or you want to improve your writing? specifically, right? Or like is there a particular part of language that you'd want to focus on? You'd have to be specific, right? Like you couldn't just say, I want to be a better Chinese speaker. Like, do you want to be a better Chinese speaker for business or for pleasure or for what, right? Let me go back to Leo because I promised to go back to Leo. Leo says, my goals for the first trimester is to publish my studies and be able to describe them from beginning to end. Publish also in a personal blog and make consistent studies, publications upon subjects like finance, tech, and machine learning. Okay. Okay, Leo. So we can work with that. We can work with that. Let's start that. Move this down. Get a different color again. Okay, so let's just call Leo's overall consistent studies. All right. Publish my studies and be able to describe them from beginning to end. Publish also in a personal blog and make consistent studies, publications upon subjects like finance, tech, and machine learning. Okay. So I want to leave the studies part for now because I think that most people are kind of seeing how you can do that, you know, in the last two examples. But let's do that, right? Let's do the second part. I will start a personal blog that talks about data science topics, right? That is specific enough. There may be more specific ways to express that. If you guys have them, let me know. But let's just focus on that. I want to start a personal blog for data science topics. That seems like a specific enough goal, right? Measurable. How can we measure this? What do you guys think? Give me some ideas for measuring this. I'm going to delete these out. But what do you guys think in terms of measuring? How can you measure your progress about starting a personal blog? So think about that. Starry Vibes says, that's great. I really appreciate the way you structured it. Yeah, thanks for that, Starry Vibes. I can structure these quickly because I've done this so long, right? For myself, for my employees. But the more you practice it, the more you'll start to see those things, right? They'll start coming to you, right? Okay, so Rex says number of posts per set amount of time. Yeah, okay, cool. I like that. So I'm just throwing this out there. I will make a blog post every single week. Get the blog site or blogging profile up in 1 week. Okay. Osama says number of followers increase. Okay. Yeah. So I like both of those. So I will have the initial blog site up in 1 week. And I will increase my followers to X number. I don't know what that number should be, but the point is that we should be specific on this, right? RC Sim says the quality of posts seems like the hardest to measure. It is. It's very difficult. Very difficult. But you know what? That almost feels like another, like a separate goal. And you could even argue that it's like a year 2 goal, because if we don't even have a blog now, then let's just get off the ground, right? Posting lots of junk would abuse the metric very easily. Yeah, but you don't know it's junk, right? To you, it's great, right? I mean, social media is funny that way. You write great things that nobody reads, right? Because they're only great in your mind, right? So you don't know that it's junk, right? But I hear you, RC Sim. But look, let's just get off the ground, right? Let's just get started. Most people don't even do that, right? So I hear you, RC Sim, but there can be goals after the goal, right? The goal right now is just to get off the ground, right? Like, did you guys hear this? There's like a like an Alex Hormozy video. I don't know if I call it viral, but did you guys know that 95% of podcasts never even make it to their 20th episode? If you get beyond 20 episodes, you are already in the top 5% of all podcasts that have ever existed. Do you guys know that? That's an interesting stat, right? I don't know exactly how he came up with that. You know, maybe Spotify would put that out, right? But just get started. Just put the stuff out there, right? Yeah, you're going to suck initially, sure, right? But just get out there, right? Just get started. Okay. Is this achievable? Is it achievable to get a blog site up in a week and to make a blog post every single week? What do you guys think? I think so, right? There's plenty of blogging tools out there, right? Blog post every single week. I did that. I mean, it's not easy. So I know that's not easy to keep up with, but is it achievable? Sure, right? Just because it's not fun or not easy doesn't mean you shouldn't put it down, right? Yeah, RC Sim is already voting 1, right? Yeah, I think it's reasonable, right? It is achievable. Not easy. Not every day is going to be fun. Not every idea you have is going to be great, but it's achievable, right? Yeah, Denelson also agrees. Yeah. So it's achievable. Is this relevant? I think it's relevant to people who are independent data scientists, right? You know, maybe as your boss, I'd sign off on this if it was like an internal blog, right? I've done internal postings to my company intranet and stuff like that. Those are fun. But is it relevant to data science? Sure. Publishing your work's important, right? I always tell you guys that, right? Leo says, my initial goal is to show how much experience I have in domain knowledge. Yeah, so in that case, of course, this is relevant to that, right? Having a blog to publish on is definitely relevant to showing the experience and the domain knowledge you have. Huh. And then time bound. What do you guys think? What do you guys think on the time bound? What do you guys think? Yeah, I guess you can let the quality get hit just if you're running out of time, but you can be motivated to keep quality up to learn as much as possible and impress people more. Maybe, because you never know what's going to impress people though, right? What impresses people? That's too, subjective, right? It's too qualitative. What impresses people? You know, I tell people all the time, like, I will work on things that I think are amazing that nobody reads, and then I'll be standing in line at Starbucks waiting for my double espresso. I'll post something and it becomes like some ridiculous post that 10,000 people read. Like, you don't know. You just don't know. Like some of my most viral stuff I wrote like in 10 seconds waiting for my Starbucks. Like, so like, I'd rather see people just get stuff out there than to say, oh, I'm going to work on this and really make it quality and really refine everything. And because you just never know. You just never know. One post a week, well done, is achievable. Sure. Leo says, I would like to share briefly my thoughts about a topic. Nothing too deep. That's for the weekly posts. Like, are you talking about another channel there, Leo? Like another publishing avenue? Because the weekly posts are for the blog, but then sharing the briefly thoughts about a topic, I'm not sure exactly what that one refers to. 20 posts at 1 per week would be 20 weeks for the time bound. Okay. So I like how RC Sim is proposing, hey, I want to get to 20 posts. I think it's going to take me 20 weeks. So So at 20 weeks, I'll feel like the blog is off the ground, right? I'm ready for the next phase of the blog. I'm no longer in the initial starting phases. So 20 weeks. So what is that? That's 5 months, right? I will do this in 5 months. What do you guys think? Leo says for the blog, not like the studies that takes 2 months to work on. Okay, got you, Leo. Okay. Yeah, so 5 months, 5 months to get your blog off the ground, 20 posts. Denelson says, I agree with RC Sim. Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable rationale, right? I want to get to 20 posts. That's going to take me 20 weeks. So yeah, 5 months. So there you go, Leo. That's your goal. That's your smart planning for that goal. Okay. Osama added how to communicate with non-technical stakeholders. Yeah, ooh, that's a hard one. Or a harder one. But let's try it. Let's try it. So the overarching desire here is improve communication with non-technical stakeholders. You know, in a way, Osama, I'm glad you broke it down further, because in a way that kind of is the goal already, right? I mean, that's pretty specific, right? So this is the first instance where we can actually just take that desire and write it as the specific part of the goal, right? Now, I realize that I asked you a couple of questions, right? So I kind of teased it out a little bit, but for the most part, the way you put that last one about non-technical stakeholders is pretty specific. So where I think this gets a little harder, guys, is how do you measure that? How do you measure that? Give me your ideas in the chat. Let me know in the chat. How do you measure that? How do you measure your current communication with non-technical stakeholders versus the improvement? That gets a little harder, yeah? What do you guys think? Let me know. Give you guys a minute to think about that one. That one gets a little harder. That's not going to be easy. What do you guys think? RC Sim says, SurveyMonkey survey given to non-technical stakeholders. Osama says stakeholder satisfaction. Okay. So both of you are kind of saying the same thing. Maybe they can measure by speaking with coworkers that aren't in tech and practicing their communication. Yeah. Okay. So the three of you are basically saying the same thing. You know, we got to form some sort of a feedback group, right? So I will form a yeah. So this one is definitely a little bit more work on your part to get those measurements. But I agree, right? Getting some sort of a feedback loop is what you really need for this goal. They either understood you better or they didn't, right? So yeah, I like that. So good job to the three of you for coming up with that, but I think that makes sense, right? Is it achievable? Sure. Is it relevant? Sure. And I think it's great that Osama's coming up with this type of goal, right? Time bound. What is the time that you guys think will be needed to meet this goal? We have this colleague group of feedback, but maybe we don't. Maybe we need more than just one feedback session. Maybe it needs to be ongoing. Maybe you need to meet with them on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, maybe. Right? You have the feedback group. Use them as much as possible. What do you guys think? Denelson says 4 to 6 months with regular bi-weekly meetings. Denelson, I think that's achievable in some companies, but my experience has been that that's a little bit aggressive. I would say that this is probably more of a year-long process. Here's why I say that. Most of your non-technical stakeholders are going to be basically people above you, your managers and your executives. And it's very, very, very hard to get those people to agree and to show up, right? Because just because they agree doesn't mean they're going to show up to bi-weekly meetings. That's a huge demand on most executives that I've worked with. 4 to 6 months for you to improve your communication is also a little bit aggressive. It takes time. It takes time to develop good communication. So I think it's more of a year-long effort to improve. So if you were to come to me with this, I'm your manager. That's the feedback I would give you, right? That it's going to take a little bit longer than 4 to 6 months, and bi-weekly meetings is a huge expectation for the people that you need for this, right? For your non-technical people. So that's what I would say. But of course, this wasn't your goal. This was Osama's goal. So Osama, what do you think? Osama, you're going to give us the best feedback here. So let us know, Osama. But that's what I would say, right? You're on the right track with the colleague feedback group, but it's going to take you time to develop, no matter who your feedback group is. And then non-technical stakeholders means executives, means busy people, busy schedules, very hard to get all of those people to have the same common free time. So I think quarterly meetings is a little bit more realistic, more achievable, right? Coming back to the achievable side. So Osama, think on that and let me know. I want to make sure I get as many people as possible. I think the last one is Denelson. So Denelson, I saw your statements earlier. Osama, think about that while we start on Denelson's. And in Denelson, you'll be the last one we do today. I can't believe we've already gone 2 hours talking about goals. You guys are crazy. I can't believe this that we went 2 hours on this. All right, let's what's a good color? Let's go back to the original yellow. Okay, so Denelson says, by the end of 2025, I want to learn and study data science for energy efficiency. I want to dedicate 20 to 25 hours a week to my development. I can measure development by studying white papers that energy companies publish and try to replicate those with similar methods and then take a step further and create my own code. Okay. So Denelson, we kind of already have some of those components and some of the other goals that we did, right? So I like how you were specific, right? Keep on doing that same error. I want to improve my data science models for energy efficiency. I'm going to specifically say models for you, Denelson, right? Because when it comes to energy efficiency, you know, you're probably not like dealing with like data wrangling issues. You're dealing with modeling, right? So specifically, we're going to say data science models. Is it measurable? What do you think about taking these measurements, and applying them to you, Denelson? Or white papers on it feels like if we just substitute energy efficiency, we can probably get to a pretty good measurable goal. What do you think, Denelson? This is your goal. And you've learned a couple things since you wrote that post, because I know that you wrote it a few minutes ago, right? Half an hour ago. So what do you think, Denelson? It feels like we can just do this, right? Right? You're going to read papers. Some of those papers will be good enough for you to do your own research on, and some of that research will be good enough for you to do your own articles on. Maybe there's other people that you can talk to, maybe not necessarily colleagues, but you can find some sort of online group or something, right? Feels achievable, feels relevant. And I think you said it's going to take you a year. Denelson says, I agree with those measurements. They will give me something to target. Yeah, I think so too, right? So Denelson, this means that if you were to take a year, that means you're going to read about 48 white papers, right? 12 of them, you're going to look at the code, right? And then some articles will come out of that, right? Does that feel reasonable to everybody else in the chat for a year? I think it does. If I was Denelson's manager, I'd sign off on this, right? It's specific, it's achievable. There's some pretty good measures behind it. You know, from a manager's perspective, I know that now I have 2 employees, right? One's working on energy efficiency, the other one's working on decision trees. They're following a very similar learning plan. So I'd sign off on this, right? It fits the framework. Okay, so coming back to Osama, by the way, we're still looking for feedback from you on how this worked out. But on Osama's goal, Denelson says, is there another way to measure progress that doesn't have coworker feedback, but maybe other people outside of your job? Yeah, sure, Denelson, you can add that. It doesn't have to always be colleagues that you're getting feedback from. They just have to be non-technical people, right? So maybe we could even change that, because we did specify non-technical stakeholders, but it could be just non-technical people. Can you explain neural networks to your mother? Right? That's challenging, but it's good practice. And she's not a colleague, right? Or a coworker, so yeah, maybe you could do that. You can play with what the like how you actually execute this. The point is to get it into the framework, right? The point is to make sure that you have a measure or have some sort of feedback group. Well, the feedback group is our measurement, right? But have something where you can say, I met with this person in February and they didn't understand a thing. I met with them again in April and they understood me a whole lot more, right? So who those people are, what you actually talked about, that's the smaller details of that. Don't try not to get too caught up in those. But sure, it doesn't have to be your colleagues. It can be whoever you want. I think that I hit everybody who suggested one of their goals. If I missed it, I'm sorry, but I think I hit everyone. And I think that I covered everything that I wanted to cover. So quick review here. Two parts, right? What does the entire process look like at a company, from my experience? And then how do you have a framework to fit those goals? So February, you're going to be doing your goal setting. June is your mid-review. October is the kind of like the alarm bell to say it's the year end is coming. December, you do your self-assessments. Your manager will also do an assessment. It's not known to you yet. That will happen in January, where you will review it with your manager. And then in late January, bonuses and your ratings and all of that come into play. And then February, you start it all over again. In February, you'll be expected to do your goals. And then you're going to follow the SMART framework. They have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So just remember those 5 things: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay? Denelson says, if I were to also add my goal in computer vision and how I want to improve my skills in action and spatial recognition and decision making for models, I also want to achieve this for 2025. Would I have to adjust my previous goal from 4 papers to 3 papers? I would be dedicating 15 hours a week to this second goal. I don't think you should adjust the goal. I think that you should just be able to determine what is the number of goals you want to achieve for the year, right? Learning about models for an industry and then also learning about computer vision as a whole is probably pretty aggressive for a single year, right? So sometimes it's okay for you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave this goal for a future year. So I really think that's more of the challenge there, Denelson. Don't adjust, because then you'll just end up with half knowledge on 2 things, right? Instead of full knowledge on 1 thing, right? So that's what I would just, if you were a direct report and you were asking me, I would discourage you from doing that. I'd rather have you know an entire topic than the half of 2 topics. So it's really just more about what does the overall planning for your studies look like? And when I say overall, I mean like multi-year, not just this quarter or this month, right? So that's the adjustment I would encourage you to think about more, Denelson. Like, what does your overall plan look like? Not, well, let me cut time from this and cut time from this and cut time from this, and then you kind of haven't really mastered anything, right? That's what I would want you to avoid. So that's how I would advise you, Denelson. Osama says, I appreciate it, sir. The goal is becoming more comprehensible. Yeah. Well, I think that will help you, Osama, right? If you could form that feedback group and say, hey, this is what I'd like to talk to you about, and you may not understand me today, but I'm going to work on that, right? That's your job, right? But I think it feels like the right way to go about it as far as how to improve that. Okay. Excuse me, guys. Had to sneeze there. All right. So I think I've hit on everything that I intended to hit. It takes practice, right? You guys saw me coming up with the SMART goals pretty quickly, but I've been at this a while, right? I mean, I've sat through dozens of sessions, for the people that have worked with me over the years, or people who work for me over the years, as far as helping them through this. But I want you to start thinking about these frameworks because, not only are they going to be expected from you when you work at a professional organization, but it also helps you personally, because you can use this for personal goals too, right? You can use this for any type of goal that you want, really. So I think, so like I said, I've covered everything I want to. I hope it's been beneficial. Really looking forward to bringing you more of these types of one-off tutorials. But overall, I want to thank all of you for staying with me for this. I can't believe we went 2.5 hours talking about goals, but that's great. I love the back and forth. Thank you so much to everybody who is willing to volunteer their goals. That's not always easy. So really appreciate all of you. As always, you know, it's a crazy world that we're living in. So please take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I'll see you guys next time.